Iranian intelligence is not good. It's not at all good. It's never been good. And it's because they don't get good training. The Russians will help them out a little bit. The Chinese will help them out a little bit, but essentially they're on their own. They are indeed hitting hotels with drones and missiles, especially in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. They hit a hotel in Muscat a couple of days ago. They're doing this because it's the best they can do. And what they want to do is to affect the local economies, right? It's one thing if you fire a rocket or send drones to attack an American, military installation in Abu Dhabi or Dubai. Nobody's going to really care. But if you hit the Burj Al Arab, the big hotel that's in the shape of a sail, or you hit the Jumeirah Towers Hotel, where I was staying a week ago, by the way, you're going to affect the economy. And you're going to make people staying in those hotels leave the country. So that's the plan. These are not targeted attacks against individuals. They're random attacks, just trying to do as much damage as possible. On my very first day in operations at the CIA, I was working at the American Embassy in Athens. And I was there literally for 1 hour. I got there at 8 o'clock in the morning. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the security officer came up to me and said, "John, we have a walk-in. He only speaks Arabic and he wants to speak to an intelligence officer." So I put on a disguise as quickly as I could, and I went downstairs to interview this young man. He claimed to be a member of Hezbollah, and he said that he had been sent to the American Embassy to blow it up by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And he had had second thoughts. He didn't want to kill anybody. He didn't want to blow it up. It was all bullshit, of course. He was not a member of Hezbollah. He was actually working for the IRGC. But he wanted us to sort of take pity on him and invite him in and get the story from the beginning, all while he's looking around to see where the cameras are, how thick the doors are they armored? Do I have a gun? Do my colleagues have guns? How thick the glass is at the Marine booth. It was a pre-operational planning probe, is what we call it. The reason is because this is what the IRGC does all over the world, with the point being, if the United States or the United States and Israel begin attacking Iran, the Iranians can then start attacking American embassies where they find a weak link. After the 9/11 attacks, Congress appropriated billions and billions of dollars to build new embassies all around the world. The first time I ever went to Doha, the American embassy was literally above a grocery store, if you can imagine such a thing, because we didn't really have any national interests in Qatar in 1990. Well, now the American embassy in Doha takes up an entire city block, and it is fortified 9 ways from Sunday, specifically because of the reason that you cite, that the IRGC is out there testing the security at American embassies and American non-military installations all around the world just so they can blow them up. Terrorism is real, and I'm not making any judgment on the U.S. and Israeli attack on Iran. I'm opposed to it. I've always been opposed to it. But what I am making a judgment on is that the Iranians do engage in terrorism. They always have since the 1979 revolution. And they're always looking to see what of the United States can they blow up. And I would say you only really need to go back to the end of World War II. Listen, you can go back 5,000 years if you want to study Egypt and Mesopotamia and ancient Persia, of course. But to get an idea of today's Middle East, you really only have to go back to the end of the Second World War. Start with a book called The House of Saud. Even as a CIA analyst who already knew a lot about Saudi Arabia, that book really put me on the right path. You can see how Saudi Arabia was created out of nothing but sand. There are two parts of Saudi Arabia, the Nejd and the Hijaz. The Hijaz used to be a part of Transjordan. It goes all the way down the Red Sea coast down to the border of Yemen. The Nejd was just that desert wasteland in the center of the peninsula. And that's all it was a wasteland until oil was discovered there. Now it's the sort of the heart of the Saudi economy. But start with those books, and then take a look at things like the Sykes-Picot Agreement, for example, and the creation of Israel. There was a book From Beirut to Jerusalem that was quite popular in the 1980s. It's still out there. Take a look at that book as well. There's a lot that's going to be at your fingertips.
In April of 2000, we were living in Athens. Tough assignment for me because we were critical threat for terrorism.
Athens, Greece, to be clear, not because there is an Athens, Ohio.
Athens, Ohio.
I think that's where your boy Joey Burrow's from.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm shaving, getting ready for work, and my oldest son was 6 years old at the time. He's sitting on the floor next to me watching me shave. And I'm asking him, so what are you going to do today? What are you going to learn today? You know, what are you going to play at recess? And then he says to me, I told Mommy she shouldn't kiss Uncle Stelios on the lips. She should only kiss you on the lips. And she told me to mind my own business. I felt like I had been electrocuted. So I wiped the shaving cream off my face. I went into the bedroom. She was sleeping, and I kicked the bed. And she says, what? I said, who the fuck is Stelios? She said, where did you hear that name? I said, who is he? And then she said, don't believe everything the 6-year-old says. And I said, I'm going to leave before I do something that I'm going to regret for the rest of my life. So I got in the car and I went to work. And that afternoon, she started calling me every 5 seconds. And I just would let it go to voicemail. Finally, the secretary came into my office and she said, John, your wife's on the phone and she's crying. I said, yeah, she should be crying. And she said, no, she was in a car accident. She's injured. And I was like, for God's sake. So she was calling my phone again. So I picked it up and I said, what? And she said, I got in an accident and I'm injured and the kids are crying. And so I drove up to the accident scene and the car she was first in a left-hand turn lane to make a left. There was a guy 5 cars back. Greeks are very impatient drivers. She went to make the left. He came from the back and just T-boned her and pushed the car up onto the sidewalk and demolished it. And she broke her wrist and it was a big mess. So I go up there and get out of my car, my fully armored, BMW 540 with, my 2 guns. And I said to him, hey, what happened here? And he gets all excited. He says, your wife, she's a whore. I said, my wife is a whore? And then he was in a coma for quite a while, 3 days.
Oh, you had that built up.
Any other day,
yeah.
I would have let it go.
Yeah.
Any other day. So I got arrested.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah. And
how do you arrest the CIA station chief?
No, I wasn't the chief. I said, look, I have diplomatic immunity. So, I'm sorry. I'm wrong. I admit I'm wrong, but I have diplomatic immunity. And they're like, okay, just sit in the cell. They left the cell door open and they let me keep my gun, which was nuts. But then, they brought me in and, the guy, he was clearly concussed. He hadn't yet kind of, faded out. That was at the hospital later, but he was sitting there in a chair and he's just like, you could see like the birds tweeting, from the cartoons. And, he says to me, so what happened? So I told the story. And then this is the police captain for the whole station. And he says to the guy, is that true? You called his wife a whore? And he said, yes, we got in an accident. She yelled at me and I called her a whore. I did not know that it is a crime to call a man's wife a whore in Greece. And so they charged him. And I said, listen, I can't get charged because I have diplomatic immunity, but in good conscience, please don't charge him. I beat him like almost to death. So they ended up dropping the charge. He filed a lawsuit against me later, but because I had immunity, it was just thrown out. And the only fight I've ever been in my entire life.
Wow. What do you think would have happened if you hadn't left the house that morning? Because remember the moment you said, I'm going to leave here before I do something I regret? Yeah, so many different places where you could ask yourself what you would do in a certain circumstance. Was that a moment for you? Like if you had stayed there, do you think you could have crossed to the other side?
I think it was possible on that day. I remember like physically seeing red, like everything momentarily was a shade of red. And I thought, I'm going to lose control of myself. I better leave. I remember my first operational boss telling me, as a general rule, he said, never lie in medical, finance, or security. They'll put you in prison. Never lie to me. I'll put you in the hospital.
Wait. Medical, finance,
and
security. So medical because you could have something serious wrong.
Because maybe you've got a drinking problem, or you're snorting lines on the side to keep the hours going, or, you're going down some kind of spiral and you don't want anybody to know.
And then finance.
Yeah, every 6 months or so, we would get this all hands email from the director, whoever happened to be director, saying, one of your colleagues was arrested this morning by the FBI for misusing his CIA credit card. Let this be a warning to all of us, blah, blah, blah. Never charge a prostitute to your CIA credit card. And if you're going to steal from the CIA, steal millions. Don't steal $200 and then you get 6 months in jail. So that's what security will do. And then finance, the same thing. But security is worried that you're going to go to the Russian embassy and say, hey, listen, I have a gambling problem. I need 50 grand right now, and I can make it right for you.
People would sell for that little?
That's what Alder James sold for. His first meeting with the Russians, he needed to pay off $50,000 credit card debt. And so he gave up the identities of two of our agents, and they were both immediately executed. $50,000.
But you assume if you're a CIA officer, official, analyst, spy, that seems too little. It seems like to your point, if you were going to steal, you'd steal more. Or if you were going to negotiate with the Russians, you would get, I don't know what you would get.
He ended up $2 million wealthier. 12 people were executed because of his information. He ratted them all out. And then was so careless, he bought a $2 million house in Arlington, Virginia. He drove a Jaguar. The guy's making $70,000 a year with a $2 million house and a Jaguar. And then he was bragging in the office that he put an in-ground pool with a gazebo that he built. And everybody who worked with him knew he was drunk all day long. It's like, well, where's this money coming from? So somebody reported him to security. The problem then was that security sent the file to this 27-year-old kid who sat on it for 18 months while Ames continued to spy for the Soviets, and then drove over to his house and said, wow, that's a really nice house. And then that was it. Finally, there was a woman.
That means he let multiple people get executed.
Yes, he did. It was on his watch. And then there was a woman named Sandy Grimes who said, this is ridiculous. Either we're going to do an investigation or we're not going to do an investigation. So she did an investigation. And she found that he was making trips to Mexico City. And every time he would come back to Mexico City, he would make an enormous bank deposit. 100,000, 150,000. Remember, this is before 9/11, so there's no anti-money laundering law that you have to report it to the IRS if it's more than 10 grand. So she said, he goes to Mexico City, he comes back, and then within days, he puts $100,000 in the bank. He's got to be spying for the Russians. She's the one who caught him. And then in what's called the hot wash, where they go over like lessons learned, where did we fall asleep at the switch here? She did that investigation, and she sent a paper to the director recommending that 27 people be reprimanded, right? All through the chain of command. He had been a drunk for 20 years, and they just kept promoting him. So he would be somebody else's problem. And they made him chief of counterintelligence for the Soviet branch.
Oh, he was a senior guy.
Oh, he was a senior guy. He was a GS-15.
I thought he was a regular dude.
It was a GS-15. So he had the actual names of all of the sources that we had recruited that were penetrations of the Kremlin or penetrations of the KGB. And so the director, John Deutsch, decided that no, he's not going to reprimand or discipline these people. There are 7 who is going to put a very strongly worded letter in their files. And she's like, you know what? This isn't for me. And she quit.